The things we did last summer.
I'll remember all year through.
The things we did last summer are things we love to do. Last summer, last summer.
Oh, what a summer it was.
Hot summer nights.
Hot summer days.
Every time I think of them, I think of the ways of how we did the things we did last summer.
Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime Project. We're Gary Weis and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week, we are premiering a new show as part of the project, Brad.
Brand new. A little something we call Deep Thoughts.
Yes, Deep Thoughts with Brad and Gary. This is a show where we are going to explore, let's say, SNL-adjacent material. Sometimes.
You may remember this previously as a bonus episode.
A bonus episode. Now it's formally a part of the project.
This is what our whole offseason was about, everybody.
Yeah, coming up with those two words as a title for this. This week's Deep Thoughts are about things we did last summer.
Indeed. Not we, they.
Not we, they. This was a show that aired in the middle of season 4, right here after episode 3. Correct?
Yeah, early. This was the first Saturday break they had. Instead of running a rerun or something, they ran this brand new show, Things We Did Last Summer.
And this is a film, quote unquote, by Gary Weis.
Oh, now look, he uses air quotes on an audio medium. Interesting how that
But
works.
I said quote unquote. Written by Don Novello, and it stars the cast in a mockumentary, really, right? About what they did last summer.
Yeah, a bunch of vignettes about what they did last summer. Directed by Gary Weis.
Yep. Still.
Okay.
It's still.
A, you skip that, and B, don't comment after I say it. Okay.
I said, quote unquote, a film by Gary Weis, and you got hung up on the quotes.
I did. And allegedly, if you look this up online, they give an uncredited writing credit to Michael O'Donoghue.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you look on IMDb and some other review places, he's obviously not credited in the proper credits.
No.
And so I, of course, reached out to our buddy Dennis Perrin and asked, and he didn't know. He couldn't give definitive. He's like, I don't know, maybe he had a little hand in it somewhere, but nothing too crazy.
I was going to accuse Dennis of going into IMDb and just updating it with Michael's.
There's really only one spot I could see his hand. So we'll talk about it when we get there.
Yeah. So this mockumentary really is just, like you said, vignettes from each of the cast members of what they did last summer.
That previous summer. Yeah, between season 3 and season 4.
Yeah. And really the only ones that show an accurate portrayal of what they did was John and Dan.
And Bill. Bill did do that.
Right.
What I think happened was Bill had this plan, and we'll talk about it on his segment, where he was going to go do this. And I think they knew pretty close after the end of season 3 that John and Dan were going to go open for Steve Martin.
Right.
So 3 of your 7 are doing something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think they decided to cobble this together because there are some pieces that are just like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
So I think it was, instead of just doing a Dan and John special, they came up with this idea. And I mean, I get it. Like, let's put something new on Saturday that's not the show, not a rerun. So the idea is there. It's a cool idea. And this really is the only SNL movie, I guess, kind of, like, of the original cast. Like, if you wanted a movie at the time with the SNL cast, this is it.
Yeah.
I'm fishing right now.
Oh, I can hear it. Yeah, I mean, it's not something that I was captivated by.
No.
I think, we should say, the entire, what was aired in, October 28th, 1978?
Yes.
Is not really available anywhere.
No, it is hard. We tried.
We did.
But yeah, so we should say, yes, what we are going to talk about is what was released after the fact on video and on the DVDs. It's on the special features of the season 3 content, which is odd because it came out in season 4, but whatever.
Right.
And I know it's available online, but there's stuff that was cut out, and finding that stuff, especially nowadays, because certain websites have gone down and whatnot, very hard to find. I will say I did reach out to Gary Weis. Go figure, he's not responding.
No. He's listened to the show.
Friend of the pod, Gary Weis.
So every cast member has a segment within this. And because not everything is readily available, Jane's segment, we were not able to watch at all.
Right. Jane's is gone completely. And then there are segments from some of the other segments that aren't there. Pretty much mostly, I think, for music rights. I think it's music rights. There's some stuff taken out of Bill's. There's some stuff taken out of Garrett's. Jane's, I'm assuming. So Jane's ended the show originally. It was the next to last clip, I should say. And I'm only guessing from what I've been able to piece together to be able to find that there were too many music cues. And when they took that out, they just couldn't assemble anything like coherent enough to keep on.
Right.
Which is interesting considering the rest of the program. Which is a shame because it's Jane and she's always good.
Oh, yeah.
She went to Memphis and was doing her news shtick of trying to report the news in Memphis in the summer of '78. So it's a bummer. And it's also sad she's the one cast member you don't see now in this quote unquote official release or whatever. It's a bummer that you don't see her.
Especially for us because we love Jane.
How great is Jane?
How great is Jane? Not
Not even in the program and she gets a shout out. See that?
I was going to say, she is by far my favorite in this piece too. Because she's not sullied by this.
Fair.
Well, they did have the music rights for a song that was written specifically for this called The Things We Did Last Summer, I think, right? Is the name of the song?
Yeah.
That they use in the opening credits, and it's sung by Gilda and Bill.
Now, I can't see Bill as he sings this, but I do feel like he's got that Bill Murray, like, why am I here act he does in sketches he doesn't like, because his performance is a little bit whatever.
It felt to me like a one-take thing where they were just like, hey, will you guys sing this real quick? And that's it. That's all they did for, the entirety of the song.
I mean, hindsight is 2020. This would have been so much better if it was the Meatballs theme.
That would have been fun.
Yeah.
Or even if they had Nick the Lounge Singer singing this, like if he was singing it in character. That's where I thought you were going to go.
Well, it is funny too. There's not a lot of references to the show actually in this. There's like a handful of times where either somebody mentions it or references that they're on it, but it's not really like a Saturday Night Live show. It is really the cast members doing other things. It's the whole point.
Right. I think the one who references it the most is Gilda when she's, her whole thing starts with her talking about fame and how at first she enjoyed it and then it just became annoying. And then her whole segment is her giving tours of her apartment.
Yeah.
This felt to me like they rented an apartment to shoot this.
Yes.
And maybe she walked through it once very quickly.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes. So we should say Gilda is the first one we see. She's the first vignette. After that really long, that was the first thing too. That opening credit sequence just felt really long. And I'm like, this is not a good sign.
No.
Of things to
long.
come.
Well, the song was long too. That was the other thing about the song was it was long.
They're in the edit bay being like, we got to stretch it out.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. Gilda's house. There were times I'm like, I feel like, she just walked in and just never saw this house before. I mean,
it's clearly improvised. Like that is apparent. There's this part in her bedroom where she's like gets in this little child's bed and talks through why it's comfortable for her and then finds a suitcase and I
had no notes from that room. It starts off funny, but it's very long. It's a very long piece. And like you said, it's improvised and it doesn't really go anywhere. I don't think it's commenting on anything or saying anything. It's literally just Gilda walking around an apartment explaining to people what the rooms are. Like she has an exercise room and it's all about how she doesn't know what the machine is. And I don't know, I do this, I scratch my head if it itches. It's like she doesn't know what to do in these rooms. Mm-hmm. To your point, maybe she did a walkthrough once.
Maybe.
She takes them to the bathroom, and the only thing I wrote down on this where she basically leaves everybody in the hallway, the 7 people she has, to go to the bathroom. That's the whole gag. But my only note was, there's a picture of the Hugh Hefner bumper on the wall with all the ladies in the bunny outfits with Hugh Hefner.
Oh, really? I didn't
in the hallway when
notice
everybody's
that.
standing
In the
there.
hallway?
Yeah.
Oh, good eye.
Thank you.
This was long. Like she takes everyone through the apparently she has a gymnasium there, and there's a backyard where she makes everyone kind of walk in circles.
That was kind of the one funny part. They walk into the backyard and there's like a big picnic table, not big, but there's a picnic table. And she's like, go ahead, walk around. And they walk in a circle, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times just around the table.
Yeah.
And then they come back up. That was probably the funniest thing in the whole Gilda piece.
I don't know, man.
It was rough. Well, it was rough because before that is when she takes him to the kitchen. And this is where I wrote down, it feels like they just showed up at a random apartment and started filming like she's never been there before. Because she just literally reads the refrigerator. She opens the door and is like, this is the butter cabinet. And this is the she's like just literally reading words off the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Did you notice? So she says, this is the freezer part. This is the refrigerator. And she goes through the refrigerator. You know where I'm going with this? And she goes, and this is the freezer. And I swore to God you heard a collective sigh.
Oh, there was. No, there totally was. They were like, ah. And I think that was part of the bit was like, they're so bored with this.
They're so bored with like, why are we here? But they're hearing the sigh. I'm like, even.
Yeah, even they were.
It was funny, but not in a good way.
In a very Gary Weis way.
Yeah.
It was a lot, and it was not worth it. It was not a great beginning to this whole thing.
It was not. I did like, though, the part she finishes the tour with the buy anything Gilda wall, the gift shop, basically.
Yeah.
And she puts on a visor that says Gilda, and she starts selling T-shirts, and there's a Gilda Radner Farrah Fawcett Majors poster where she's recreating.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Not a good start. It's slow, and it seems like she just showed up one afternoon and walked around this house and made shit up as she went through. With the exception of the Gilda wall at the end, obviously, because you obviously had to prep that. But
right,
the showing of the apartment was oof.
I did not think this was a good way to start the show.
It wasn't, but I understand why. It's Gilda. I think you start with either Gilda, Bill, or Dan and John. And I think Gilda makes a great, she's, one of the biggest stars on the show. So I get why you do it. I get why it's Gilda.
No, I understand that part. But then once you cut it, like that's when I think you have to make that hard decision of, do we still lead off with this?
What else are you going to lead off with? I mean, is there something better?
I think I would have led off with John and Dan.
I think it's
because they're next. They go right after this.
Yep.
And it's only 2 songs.
Mm-hmm.
This is filmed from their Universal Amphitheater performance opening for Steve Martin a month or so earlier, maybe 6 weeks. We hear the intro and then Hey Bartender and Rubber Biscuit. I would have started with that.
I think it's too big of a start because you're just going to go way downhill after that. I think it's too big, but I don't know. Like, Gilda ramps you up into it, but yeah, it was fun. I mean, and then it's just them performing 2 songs, just literally their performance. It's fine.
It's funny because I was thinking like they had this idea to do something like this, and the only way they could use anything that Dan and John did was to just show footage of the show because they were like, we're not doing anything extra. We've got to rehearse.
I mean, yeah, that's all they did. That's all they were doing. Yeah. That was rehearsing and getting ready. Like they were like tunnel vision. That's all they were doing. We talked about the time frame. By the time they set this up to record, you're talking about 2 guys who were not musicians. So, and also, John had Animal House. He was sure promoting Animal House and all that coming out. So he's just limited in what he could do. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that's all Dan and John wanted because they're never on camera as Dan and John. All it is the footage of them as the Blues Brothers. So
even in that very long opening credits sequence, it says Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, the Blues Brothers, all in one frame. Yeah.
I mean, I obviously like it. I love the Blues Brothers. It's always fun to see. They do Hey Bartender, which is the song people would have remembered when they saw them in April on the Steve Martin show. Right. So maybe there's a little bit of a remembrance. And then they do, you said Rubber Biscuit, which features Dan on vocals, which was fun and interesting, a little funny. And I did write down, you must love that because I know you love that song.
I do.
I was like, Gary has to love this.
I do love Rubber Biscuit. I actually didn't realize that Blue Lou was singing on Rubber Biscuit.
On the back of the...
Yeah. The bow, bow, bow.
Yeah.
That was fun to see.
I thought Dan was good. Very good, nailing the part. Not a surprise.
No. So Dan is what? He's 26 here?
Oh, yeah, probably
right?
somewhere in there.
Yeah. It's crazy. He just looks so much older, and I think the way he carries himself when he's in the Elwood character.
He carries himself.
Really, any character, really. But
yeah,
he was great. I really enjoyed this.
I did too.
If they had just shown this performance as the whole things we did last summer, that would have been great.
Yeah, I liked it too. One of the things we miss in the DVD is, I believe, when this ends, there's a to be continued or something like that, because in the original broadcast, they do come back to them, which is funny. One of my notes was like, I wish they would do Soul Man.
Right.
Which they do. They actually end with Soul Man. That I have seen the video of from some TV station in Chicago or something where they have it where it's like the last 30 seconds of Soul Man, and then it goes into commercial, and then they come back to the closing credits. But if you watch the DVD or whatnot, it's just these two songs. And then we move on to Bill.
And so we see Bill in some crazy car that he says he bought from a Shriner, which I thought was funny.
It is a nutty car. He opens the door at one point when he gets out. I'm like, is there a sword on the door?
Yes, there is.
There is. Okay.
Yes, there is. Yes. I wrote that down too. And he calls his mom, who's played by Gilda, to explain that he quit comedy and he's going to play baseball in Seattle.
Yes.
And then, and then this vignette is him then going and practicing with this baseball team. I enjoyed when the coach was like, why are you late? And he's like, I got 2 speeding tickets in Montana. And then someone else asks him right away. He's like, I got 3 speeding tickets in Montana.
And the whole running gag in this bit is he's trying to leave comedy.
Right.
And everybody he comes in contact with keeps telling him jokes.
Yeah.
Like Borscht Belt one-liner jokes that are really bad. At one point, he's like, I've heard that joke told by better people. I think it's to the mechanic. I think he's like...
He got really upset because his car breaks down going to the game, and the mechanic just keeps telling him jokes. He's like, won't you work faster if you're not talking? Why are you talking?
No, this was like one of the great lines. Yes, he goes, you must go slower when you talk. Why don't you just do this real fast and tell me the joke later? And the best part about this, though, is why is he in the car while it's up on the racks? It's on the rack, and he's sitting up there like...
Yeah, that was funny. Also says,
that was funny.
My favorite line to the mechanic was, you must have a lot of confidence in that joke to tell it again.
I mean, this is like one of those things where if you play it long enough, you're going to get enough one-liners.
Yes.
Like if you give Bill Murray enough screen time, he'll give you a couple gems. There was a funny bit when he's in the outfield and the guy comes up and tells him the long joke all in Spanish. And the entire time he's looking up into the sun like he's ready to catch a fly ball.
Well, you hear the crack of a bat and then it goes to them. Yeah.
And then they just stand there looking up the whole time. And then he does it all in Spanish. He's like, yeah, I've heard that.
I was hoping that he would then catch the ball. Like that's what I was
that would have been
to
good.
happen. Yeah.
That would have been good. So then they get to the baseball game and it's the big game. So this is one where I think there was a gag from what I've found out, what I've read, that the coach gives Bill a bunch of shit like he's out of shape. And Bill goes into a workout, an exercise montage. And I believe it was all done to the Rocky theme. So I think this is an instance where because of music rights, they pulled it out. And I wonder, I don't know if they have it. In what we see, there's a graphic that comes up, what is it, a week later, the big game?
Yeah.
So I wonder if they put that in later to account for that missing footage or whatever. But anyway, we get to the big game and Bill's late because of the mechanic. He finally shows up in the 9th inning. They put him in and they score like 10 runs in the 9th. In the bottom.
Yeah, they were down, I think, 10-1 when he comes in, and then they win the game 11-10 because of him. It's funny.
Did it seem like they were going back and forth from day to night in that game?
Yeah.
There were times where it was like bright and you could see people, and then there's other they would cut and it's very dark, but then you cut back and he's playing again and it's bright outside. I was like, what the?
Exactly. And then the whole thing ends with him giving a speech like Lou Gehrig that he needs to go back to comedy.
Yeah.
He basically berates the crowd for their lack of sense of humor.
He says, I've decided to go back to comedy.
Yeah. So this is like a take on his actual summer, right?
So this is real. So this is the one thing aside from the Blues Brothers, I was actually able to dig a lot on. There's an amazingly long story online about this. So Bill had known and befriended the owner of this team, this guy Van Schley or something like that. But he used to own a minor league ball club in Texas. He knew Bill and his brother Brian from the early 70s. They did a thing called TV that Bill did with Brian Dole Murray and Harold Ramis and Christopher Guest, where they actually went to the 72 Super Bowl and did this special on the Super Bowl.
Nice.
Which I find interesting because I believe that's the same Super Bowl that Bill then plays Hunter S. Thompson going to and where the Buffalo roam. But so he had visited this team, or he had visited this guy's team in Texas earlier. That team folded. This guy bought this team in Washington. So Bill was already planning to go there that summer. And so that's what I think they kind of then got this idea of, well, then let's make a thing about it. So yeah, he actually showed up at the end of July. He actually did work out, was with the team. He was like a first base coach or third base coach with the team for a little while. He actually did play. There were 2 games that he was put in as a pinch hitter late in the game. There's no footage or pictures of it because he was never scheduled to be activated. So they talk about the first game he went, he was on the road, I think, and they put him in. He got a single, he got a hit. And I think they said there's like 140 people in the crowd. And then they came back home and there was a home game. And it was, again, same thing late in the game, 9th inning, they put him in and he struck out. So he's 1 for 2 with a single and a strikeout in his minor league career.
That's awesome.
But then he goes off and shoots meatballs. I said this was the end of July.
That's
he
what I was
goes
gonna
off and
ask,
shoots meatballs, which if you know the story of meatballs, Ivan Reitman's told the story many times where they never knew if Bill Murray was going to show up. They kept shooting, and finally he showed up like a day later than he was supposed to, but they never knew if he was going to show up. But he went off and shot meatballs, and then he actually came back to the team at the end of August because the team went on to win the Northwest League Championship.
Oh, wow.
So he leaves and shoots meatballs and then runs back and comes back to celebrate with this team when they won.
That's awesome.
So this was a legitimate thing, like him doing the baseball thing that's why I feel like they knew this was happening. They knew the Blues Brothers was happening. They're like, how do we capitalize on it? Let's make everybody do something.
Well, Bill's was fun. I would argue you could have started with Bill's because it was the most fun.
Yeah.
But
it is also interesting that you lead off with your 3 main. Like, I would have spread them out a little bit more.
Right.
You're so top heavy.
And you really feel it on the back end. Because next is Garrett. So Garrett's dressed as a jockey.
That was a good summation. That was a very good summation. So after Garrett.
Yeah. Garrett's dressed as a jockey, like a horse jockey.
Took me a minute to get that, but yes.
To make money. And his wife or girlfriend or whomever's like, yeah, we need to make more money. So, okay, I guess going back to jockeying makes sense to give you the illusion that he's done this before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I was like, oh, we're going to see Garrett do something with horses. But instead he goes to an art studio. And I was like, what the hell is he doing at an art studio?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole shtick is he's going to pose to be a lawn jockey for like statues, for lawn statues.
That was my first real laugh of the program. When I realized what he was doing, when he walked into the art studio and I realized, oh, he's going to pose as a lawn jockey, my first genuine laugh, I think.
Really?
It beat out a lot because the Bill Murray thing was just so long and drawn out that you'd get a line here or there and it was a chuckle. This was my first genuine laugh. It was like, oh, he's going to pose as a lawn jockey.
Wow. Well, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it enough to laugh. I did not get a full laugh out of that. But that was it. I mean, it was my notes on this were that was short.
It was short. Yep.
Was it funny? That was my second note.
No. This one obviously did feel a little bit more written. And I don't mean that necessarily as a positive.
Yeah.
It's Garrett.
Right.
Why is there not some kind of singing thing happening? Go to the well.
Correct. Yeah.
Put him on Broadway. Like, especially if it's, I was going to say, especially if it's not going to be funny, but I think this was meant to be funnier than it was.
Yeah.
It's like Garrett getting stuck in another shitty role.
Especially when like the running bit is everyone keeps asking him if he's still with Belafonte.
Right. Right.
So you're referencing that he sings and he's had this singing career. Why not lean into that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I do think this is another one where there's some stuff cut out of, I believe. I believe there's a sequence of Garrett, I guess, walking to the subway maybe or something, where I think it was to a musical track they couldn't get. And I think there is a sequence of either Garrett singing on camera or off camera. So I think there is some Garrett singing in this, but I just don't understand why that's not the focus of your Garrett piece.
I agree.
And you're right. It's the shortest piece.
Yeah, it was very short.
I will say Garrett is good in it. Like his performance is good.
Multiple takes. It's not live.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah.
I also kind of laughed at the end because, as you mentioned, he walks in this art studio and they're making all these statues and shit for the people to put in their lawns. And the final shot is they're outside a building and there's a bunch of lawn jockeys on the top awning, whatever. And then they cut and Garrett standing on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And I laughed only because I didn't understand what in the hell was going on. Like I was so confused. I just had to laugh to get myself out of it because it's like, what is he doing there?
I totally am with you. I was confused by that same point.
Oof.
So we've already said that we don't see Jane, and it leaves only Lorraine for us now.
Yeah.
So Lorraine goes to Tahiti to rough it?
That's what they say. Well, vacation. I guess she wasn't planning on roughing it. I don't know. This is one that's just completely out of my comprehension.
Yeah, I mean, she goes to Tahiti with her boyfriend and another couple. And
I thought they were just all friends.
Well, I had the sense that it was
because I don't know, because like Mackenzie, I know the one was Mackenzie Phillips. That's the only one I could I kind of knew, and then two dudes.
Right.
I thought they were a group of friends. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Anyway, it's her and three other people.
And the others scuba dive and she doesn't. And and then it becomes like this. She just wanted to relax on the beach.
There's like 2 minutes about fish at the
fish stuffed
table.
with fish.
I missed something about fish. Yeah.
All there was to eat was fish. And fish stuffed with fish, and
with fish
every
sauce.
meal was fish.
Oh,
fish. Yeah.
It was hard to pay attention at this point. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I also had a hard time paying attention because we hear her inner monologue for a while, and then we hear everyone else's inner monologues at one point, which totally, like, I was very confused about what was going on. Then she starts speaking French, and then we see Paul Rubens.
Wait a minute. You skip over the part about a huge centipede that then before she even speaks French.
Centipede.
Or is this why she's speaking French, I guess?
I think
it's
that's
like,
when
why is this monster here?
French.
Blah, blah, blah. They're everywhere. And then the other lady shoots the centipede with a dart gun? Or what is that? Not a dart gun. It's a big thing. What's that called?
Yeah.
Not a dart gun is small. This a spear. Fishing spear? I don't know. Whatever that thing's called. And then it starts oozing black ooze everywhere. I like how you just completely forget about that and just mention French.
To me, the French part was more interesting than the giant centipede. I don't know.
Yeah, very weird. And then she goes back to the front desk area, and that's where we see Paul Rubens, where it's like, again, I don't know. It's him and three other people, and she thinks he's a guy that she knew in high school, and we're back into the inner monologue again.
Right.
But then it cuts.
Uh-huh.
And then they're in Nazi uniforms?
Yeah.
Him and the other two people who were checking in?
Yes.
This is where I was like, if O'Donoghue had anything to do with this program, it's right here.
I totally agree. Yes.
Between that and Lorraine, I was like, okay, if he had a hand in anything, this is it. So, I'll pick up for you. Don't worry.
Well,
so then they go outside because this is where it turns really. Is this a play on like 70s horror films? Because then they get outside and is it like just very, like she's at the table and at one point the Nazis are at another table like talking and snickering and she's watching them and then they bring the fish back and she tries to eat it.
Yep.
I thought I saw the centipede cross on a tray at one point, like a server cross through the background with it. Like it just became all this weird visual shit.
Yeah.
There's a big red filter at one time that you're looking through. It just got really bizarre, and I just had no idea what the fuck was going on. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to say that. I don't know why I'm upset about that. Anyway.
You're allowed to be upset about it because you don't know what's going on. And then she's back in New York and in a car and
no, she's
with
in
her
LA.
boyfriend.
Because she says it's great to be back in LA.
Or LA. Sorry. Right. She's back in LA. And he puts the newspaper down and it's not her boyfriend who she was with the whole time. And that freaks her out. So
I thought
That's
that was
why I
this.
thought-
I thought that was the concierge. Was that the concierge guy at the hotel? That's who I thought that was.
I don't know.
Whatever. That's it. That's it. Like we said, then on the original broadcast, they went to the piece with Jane, where she goes to Memphis and she's visiting Memphis the summer of 78. The point being, because it was a year after Elvis had died.
Right.
But there were also a bunch of, I think the police were on strike and a lot going on in Memphis in the summer of 78.
Apparently, yeah.
Jane went, which I actually liked the idea. Jane going as her news anchor self, trying to really report real news. Like all the elements are there for this to be good.
She did interview the mayor, correct? Like the actual mayor.
Or they did a piece with the mayor. Yeah.
Yeah, they did something
I've seen
with the
pictures
mayor.
of that at least. So they did Lorraine's and they did Jane's, and then they went back to the Blues Brothers and they end the show. And this makes sense. They end the show with them and it's Soul Man. They do Soul Man, and that's the final piece you see. And if you look at the closing credits, even on what we see here on the DVD, they list one of the crew members as the Memphis production coordinator is still listed.
Right.
And in the thank yous, they thank the city of Memphis. So there's like traces that it existed, but not really.
Well, I mean, it must have been one hell of a bit if it were to raise the overall level of this thing at all.
This is just bizarre. I mean, it is a bunch of Gary Weis pieces.
Yes.
I mean, they all are, you're getting what you pay for. I'm not saying that negatively, but you had Gary Weis make a bunch of vignettes and you strung them all together to a full-length Gary Weis film.
Yeah. There's a piece here that's different, though, in that it was written by Don Novello. Or he's credited as having
He is.
written
No,
this.
he said, this is, again, where we get back to the whole actual writing thing.
Right.
He did say, he wrote this, he's quoted, he thought he got this because, remember the end of season 3, he wrote that Michael Sarrazin piece, which was about sports. And he got hurt and he broke his hip. So he was laid up. And so he has been quoted as saying, I think they just gave this to me as something to do, or they thought I knew sports as well. And, I had the time to write because I couldn't do anything. But that's why I think they had John and Dan. Yep. They now have Don writing this piece for Bill, because I think Don Novello did go with them up to Washington with Gary Weis for the shoot. Lorraine's is obviously a well-written out piece. You can tell we may not like it, but there's a story, there's an arc, there's things happening. It was written. I do think Gilda's was, we need something with Gilda. What do we do? And we just throw her an apartment, and maybe Gilda's going to be cute enough and adorable enough that people will buy it, just her talking for 3-5 minutes.
That's like, the concept of Gilda giving tours of her apartment is funny enough. Just run with that, Gilda.
Yeah, I don't know. This could be the first time I would say, if you haven't seen this, check it out. No, you're not missing anything. Even our worst episodes of the show, I'm like, check them out. There's something fun in them to see.
Well, I think even the worst episodes of the show, we have best bits. And those are the things that we're like, yeah, it's worth checking those out. This, I don't know. I think there's no reason to watch this. You're right.
There's not. And especially since you're not going to watch. I was going to say, if you would have to go through the efforts of watching this, if you could find it, watch the original. Like maybe there's something worth of seeing what it actually was that came out. Yeah. Seeing Jane's piece, because this truncated edited version is just, there's nothing there. I'm not saying the stuff that is taken out is going to make this great. I'm just saying if you're going to watch it, if you could, I'd watch the actual one. But I mean, we couldn't even do that.
Not even we could.
Not
do
even
that.
we with all of our pull.
Well,
yeah, I don't know. I like the idea. I get they're trying to capitalize on the show's growing popularity. Obviously, season 3 to season 4, they're growing leaps and bounds. They're trying to give this new audience of people who are watching the show at this time something new on the off week. After 3 not great episodes, before you get into Steve Martin. So the idea is all there. It doesn't come through. They don't pull it off, sadly.
I don't know. I wonder how it was received at the time too, right? Because
what's really weird? You can't find a lot about it. I've been digging for like reviews or people talking about it, and it's really hard. The one
Did
thing
you hear that Tom Shales review I sent?
But he actually liked it, didn't he?
I
understand his review that he did dismiss the first 3 episodes, but then he thought this had stuff to it.
Correct. Yes. And I think he was probably right about the first 3 episodes, but I was not in agreement about this.
No.
His take on this.
No.
Maybe the Jane piece really did lift it that much, and the Blues Brothers at the end.
I don't know, but it does say a lot that you can't find people saying a lot about this.
Yeah,
I tried looking up in books. I tried looking up interviews. It's really, really hard, with the exception of this oral history of Bill's piece and that team and that summer with that team.
Right.
There's not a lot, and obviously Dan and John, but
right. But this is also, they really may have never aired it again after the first showing, right? Like they could have just been like, all right,
I'm sure that was it, and then they
bury it and done.
Yeah, and then they made a video and put it out on video, and like that's it.
Yeah.
Which again is kind of a sin that Jane is completely absent.
Yeah, it's really, well, whatever.
But you know what? I think we're not accounting for exactly how huge the show was at this point. And so, no. So like they're like, let's put this out. You know what I mean? Like, let's get it out. I should have looked. I don't know when the tape came out, the official VHS, but it's like, let's just cash in on the popularity of the show as best we can.
Oh, you mean like you don't mean the original airing of this. You mean the subsequent re-release.
Like, why is this a video?
So like home video.
Yes.
Got it.
I'm trying to answer the question, why would you put this out and not have Jane on it? And my answering is because the show's so popular, you'll do it, even though you're not showing one of your main
I don't think it was
members.
released. I mean, these weren't released soon after the show.
But it came out on, let's look it up. Well, this is wrong. This is release year 1977, so that's wrong.
Thanks, Internet.
Thanks, Internet. Here's a VHS tape. Looks like 1984.
Okay.
I'm looking at a VHS tape on sale, 1984. Oh my God. The VHS tape on the back says original air date 1977. The Broadway video official VHS tape that came out, Things We Did Last Summer, says original release 1977.
That's amazing.
I mean, it's released in 1984, so like obviously no one gives a shit.
Right.
They're like, no one likes Saturday Night Live now. Remember the old days? What can we do? Cobble that video together. Whatever we can't get, it's fine. Put something out there.
Right. Well,
how about that?
I think our deep thoughts on this one are no one else needs to spend their time watching it.
No. Merry Christmas, everyone. You're welcome.
That's a shame.
We'll take the bullet on this one for you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Next week,
let's get back to some fun stuff next week.
Next week, on the early years, we'll be talking about season 4, episode 4, with host Steve Martin and musical guest Van Morrison.
If there's anybody that can help turn this season 4 around and get the upswing going, it's
Van
Steve
Morrison?
It's
oh.
Yes.
Until then, good night.
Good night.
And have a pleasant tomorrow.
Have a pleasant tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the Not Ready for Primetime Project. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please take a moment to rate and review the project wherever you find us. You can also drop us a line to let us know what you liked or didn't and what else you might like to hear in the future at nr4ptproject@gmail.com. And lastly, you can find us on social media everywhere at nr4ptproject. Thanks again for listening. Have a pleasant tomorrow. That was just garbage on film.
That was not good.
Okay, everybody, I'm waiting. People, settle down. Okay, that's better.